pay for a smoke alarm and carbon monoxide by law. They're only exempt if it's probate. Seller shall pay the cost of compliance with any minimum mandatory government inspection reports if required as a condition of closing escrow. We're going to click that box. And seller will pay for the cost of compliance with any minimum mandatory government retrofit standards required as a condition of closing this escrow under any law, whether the work is required to be completed before or after escrow. If you are in the city of Linwood, Maywood, Bell, Carson, Huntington Park, these cities all have pre-sale inspections. The city of LA has a 9A report and a certificate of compliance. Check these boxes if you don't know whether or not there's a pre-sale city inspection, but you need to make sure that your property complies with that. When you get to escrow and title, buyer pays their half, seller pays their half, each to pay their own. And escrow holder, we would love for it to be EscrowNet, but that might not work out. We don't know. Seller shall pay for the owners of title insurance policy. We use Old Republic. Seller will pay for the cost of county transfer tax. That's normal. There is no city tax in Downey. I know this because I've sold in Downey for a long time. If you sell in LA, do you know what the tax is, Felipe, in LA?
5.6.
Thank you. 5.6% in LA. You guys need to know all these little, I know there's lots of these little nuances, but when you have a seller selling in LA, and then you're like, oh, and by the way, I made a mistake. It's like $5.60 for your county transfer tax. That's a
lot.
$3,000 or $4,000 on a $300,000 deal. Okay.
Did you say county of LA?
City.
City of LA.
City and county. Total.
Yeah, it's a city transfer tax. The rest of these boxes, if it's a condominium, you just can choose if the buyer or the seller is going to pay for the HOA. Number 10, seller will pay for the cost not to exceed. Look, we have little sheets, cheat sheets. The rates have gone up for home warranty. And I believe for a house it's $550 now, including AC. The other issue, make sure you check what you're going to have. Okay, if you don't check it, they don't have to sell it to you. Okay? So if you don't check air conditioning, they're going to give you a basic policy without AC. So if you want air conditioning for your client, make sure you check that.
Right.
Yes?
So with all these, for example, like the percentage that you brought up with LA and all these nuances, where do we look?
You come to Carmen's office, and we have a whole book.
Okay.
I mean, you know, if you're going to sell something in LA, you're going to know.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to say, hey, I'm selling something in LA. Are there any things I have to look out for, right? Oh, my God, I can't type. I need to go home. I'm past my bedtime already. Okay, so you put in your home warranty. If the buyer wants to waive it, they put a clause here. You check that box. Okay, items included in the sale. What is included in the sale of a house?
Anything fixed to it
Okay, so
permanently.
clock?
No.
No.
They could put it in if they wanted to.
Permanent.
How about those things that are on the wall that are attached?
You can have a whole debate about it.
No. You could say yes.
It just depends.
You can have a shelf on a wall and it's attached. It should stay. Face plates for electrical switches.
Yes.
Drapes.
You can have a debate about it.
Light fixtures.
Yes.
Okay. It says right here.
But
Window door screens, built-in appliances, awning shutters, window coverings. All drapes stay. Attached floor coverings, television antennas, satellite dishes, air coolers, conditioners, pool spa equipment. That means like the creepy crawly, the net that you scoop all the crap out of the pool with, water purifiers, water fountains, water features, softeners, security systems, alarms, and then you come to stove, washer, dryers, refrigerators.
so if your seller doesn't want to leave the drapes, you advise them to not leave anything before showings. Or
Yes, take them down.
Take everything.
Take out your
down.
light fixtures that you want. I would say
Replace it
that
with
stays
cheap.
Hmm?
Why would it stay?
because it's attached.
Okay.
technically you're talking about stuff that's attached, adhered
But
to
if they
stuff.
want to take it off before they even listed it,
Then
how would
that's
they
what
do
I
it?
always suggest.
Got it.
Okay, so on that listing, on the listing agreement, if they do not want to leave the washer and dryer, then it should state it on the listing as well. I mean, on the
No, the
comments.
washer and dryer is not.
Oh,
It doesn't
it's not
automatic.
listed there?
If you check this box,
Ah, okay, I thought it was.
No.
Okay.
you have to check the boxes. Okay, so this is another very big issue, leased or liened items, and if there are solar systems on a house, you are definitely going to have an issue with the lender. They have to be removed if it's a lease, and the buyer has to qualify if it's leased. So if you have a house that has solar panels, check into it with the listing agent to see if your buyer can even assume the solar panels. Okay, it's very tricky. It takes a lot of time and work. Sometimes they make your buyer pay a fee. Sometimes your buyer doesn't want them and they're not going to remove them because there's a 20-year lease. So we need to be informed about these items. Brackets attached to walls, floors, ceilings, or for any such components, furniture, or items shall remain with the property or will be removed, and holes or other damage shall be repaired but not painted. So we're talking about television brackets for big screens. So just be aware.
Go back with that television thing. What did you say about it?
Well, it says right here, brackets attached to walls, floors, or ceilings for any such component, furniture, or item shall remain with the property. So it's pre-written that there's any brackets on the wall that stays with the property. Unless your buyer says will be removed and then the holes and the damage will be repaired by the seller. Does that clarify it for you? Felipe?
Yeah, I did have a question about the television that's attached to the bracket.
It's the brackets, not the TV. Okay, closing and possession. Okay, this page, I think they should have this at the very beginning. It's the major point of contention with most buyers and sellers. If you're representing the seller, give the seller a couple of days to move out. If you're representing the buyer, explain to your buyer that the seller needs a couple of days to move out. The normal time is 3 days after the close of escrow. Most sellers can't move until they have the money from the sale of their house in order to get a moving ban. So this is a very important clause that everyone skips over, and when you skip over, the seller has to be out by 6 o'clock on the day it closes, and it never happens.
I will say, you're accurate, people skip over it, and I did not realize how important it was until it came time to sell my house, and how precious those extra 3 days were.
And I'm telling you, buyers are not very nice. They never want to give up. Well, no, I want the house the day I close. I want my keys, right?
I had
So,
one want to charge me rent. I was like, no, I'm not paying you rent to stay in my place.
yeah, I think that we just skip over it too easily and don't protect people. If there's a tenant in the property, there's a clause for the tenant to remain in possession. So I think your homework is going to be you need to read and understand the rest of this contract. Statutory and other disclosures, including lead-based paint. These are all the actual disclosures that the seller has to give to you. The NHD report, the withholding tax, Megan's Law, notice regarding gas and hazardous liquid transmission, condominium plan. The seller has 7 days, it's pre-written in here, to give the buyer information about the HOA. Condition of property. So we're going to read this clause because there's a misconception in our industry. People go, oh, I'm just going to put sold as is because I'm going to put in there, it's going to protect me. It doesn't protect you. It's pre-written in the contract. All these agents that yell about that, maybe they should read their contract before they start yelling. Unless otherwise agreed in writing, the property is sold as is, in its present physical condition as the date of acceptance. Subject to buyer's investigation rights, the property, including pool, spa, landscaping, grounds, is to be maintained in substantially the same condition as on the date of acceptance. All debris and personal property not included in the sale shall be removed at the close of escrow. How people write in their offers, seller to remove all debris. It's pre-written in there. But they have to rewrite it because agents don't read their contracts. So, going back to the as is. That doesn't mean you won't get sued. Right? So just know that's not going to protect your buyer or your seller. And people that say that that's going to protect them, I don't think that's a catch-all phrase for that. Seller shall, in paragraph 14, disclose all material facts and defects affecting the property. Buyer has the right to conduct investigations of the property, as in paragraph 14. And buyer is strongly advised to conduct investigations of the entire property in order to determine its present conditions. Improvements may not be built according to code in compliance with current law or have had permits issued. Buyer's investigation of property, buyer's acceptance of the condition and any other matter affecting the property is a contingency of this agreement. So now we have two contingencies that we read, loan and appraisal. Now we have the third contingency, which is the buyer's investigation of property. The seller has to make the property available for all buyer investigations. Obviously, the buyer has to indemnify the seller. If you don't have a reputable investigation or inspection company, don't get fly-by-nights. Do not allow your buyer to say, oh, my uncle's a contractor, he's going to do it for nothing. He doesn't have insurance. So if he goes in the attic and falls through the ceiling, who's going to pay for the damaged ceiling?
Buyer.
Exactly, but the seller's going to be mad, and you think your deal's going to go through? No. So get a professional inspection company. Make sure they're bonded and licensed, or they have some sort of insurance.
Or you could be like the robber who sued the store for falling through the.
Yeah, exactly. You have to protect yourself. If you protect yourself and you protect all the parties involved, you're going to be in much better shape. Okay?
I had a burglar sue my aunt when he fell through the ceiling.
You what?
A burglar sued my aunt when he fell into
God.
the kitchen and stabbed himself with a knife. Fell through the moonroof, like the skylight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so title investing. Within the time specified, buyer shall be provided the current preliminary title report, and title is taken in its present condition, subject to all encumbrances. Of course, the property has to be clear of all liens and encumbrances prior to the close of escrow. So we're going to go to the next page, to paragraph 14. So this is your excuse me, third contingency removal. The seller has 7 days after acceptance to deliver to buyer all reports, disclosures, and information. Mazen, how many days does the seller have to give disclosures when you have a listing?
You need 5-7 days. Yeah. I'm gonna say 5. But
7. It says right here, seller has 7 days. It's pre-written in the contract. There should never be a question. You can always revert back to the contract, and you're going to see. So if you're the listing agent, you need to get disclosures out in 7 days. That's by the terms of your contract. The buyer has 17 days after acceptance, unless agreed in writing, to complete all buyer investigations, review all disclosures, reports, lease documents to be assumed by buyer, and other applicable information for which the buyer receives from seller, and approve all matters affecting the property. So now you have the 3 contingencies: 17 days for appraisal and for buyer inspection, and 21 days for your loan. So the first 17 days of your transaction are going to be very busy. Then you might be in limbo for a week or two, but you guys need to know if you have a transaction in the first 17 days. Okay? Make sure that you do your inspection. Okay, so go down to C where it says removal of contingencies with offer. Buyer removes the contingencies specified in the attached contingency removal form. If buyer, wait a minute, hold on. Okay, this is if you want to remove contingencies before you even do any of the inspections, which I don't recommend, no.
But if you're putting an offer which says you're not going to do anything, that's kind of pointless. Like you're telling Maz, you don't want termite, you don't want appraisal, you're just going to go in on it.
I didn't know. I'm not saying for him to remove his appraisal contingency or his inspection contingency, just the termite,
Okay.
right?
Well, I know that right now you guys are saying that a lot of people are putting in offers that essentially are contingent on anything.
Okay. How do you get your offer accepted if you're a buyer's agent?
You would hope to throw a good.
I'll tell you how. You have a dumb agent that writes an offer for $20,000 over the list price, gives you a $100,000 deposit, removes the appraisal contingency, removes the inspection contingency. That's it.
Yep.
And he doesn't have anything else in there. It's like, that was such a slam dunk deal, I couldn't even counter. I was like, sure, we'll take that. That's like the dumbest. Why would an agent do that to their buyer?
Yeah.
Okay, that buyer has no protection. He's got $100,000 tied up in escrow, really more than that, 143 right now. But needless to say, so this guy did check this box. And I don't think we have contingencies to give the buyer the option to back out of the deal. I'm not saying we want the buyer to back out, okay? What I'm saying is, if the house doesn't fit for them, you want them not to be tied up with something that they can't live with. So if they did, your mom and dad tried to buy a house in Whittier, and there was a problem with the foundation, they wouldn't have known that until they've done the investigation. They got to back out because they didn't like the property.
But now, let's say once you're buying your property and he puts all that money down and he doesn't, and your seller says, nope, I'm not going to let him back out.
Well, my seller hopes he doesn't back out,
Well,
but he's going to have inspection on Saturday, but he's already removed the inspection. So let's say the buyer goes in there and goes, holy moly, the foundation's ruined. Oh my God, there's plumbing leaks. I don't know what's underneath the house, neither does the seller. Now he can't back out.
Those people tried to hold our deposit.
Hmm?
Those people tried to hold our deposit saying we'd failed to perform.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Once you put all that money in escrow, you cannot get it out unless both parties sign.
No. It's 3% that.
And we'll get to that
Okay.
part. Okay. So, seller's right to cancel. If by the time specified in this agreement, buyer does not deliver to seller a removal of the applicable contingency, then the seller, after delivering a notice to perform, may cancel this agreement. So here you go. I thought the buyer was the one that was going to cancel in 17 days, and it's like, oh my God. If the buyer doesn't remove the contingency, the seller's going to cancel on you. It's pre-written here. Seller's right to cancel. Seller, after first delivering a notice to perform, may cancel this agreement in the time specified in this agreement. Buyer does not take the following actions: deposit funds as required, or the deposit if the funds are not good. Deliver a notice. Let's see. So it just gives you all the reasons why. Notice to buyer or seller to perform. The NPB or NSP shall be in writing, signed by the buyer or seller. Give the party 2 days prior, at least 2 days after delivery, or until this time specified in the applicable paragraph, whichever occurs last, to take the applicable action. It may not be delivered any earlier than 2 days. So, 15 days go by, and I haven't heard about the appraisal, right? On the 15th day, that's when I have to give the notice of the buyer to perform to remove the appraisal contingency, correct? So it's always 2 days before the action.
Oh, so it's not 17 days, then you give them.
No, you have to go, well, you can wait then if he goes, oh yeah, we have it, but
But you can go.
you
15
can
days.
go no earlier than 2 days before the
it.
designated time.
Okay.
Effective buyer's removal of contingencies. If the buyer removes any contingency or cancellation rights, unless specified in writing, buyer shall conclusively deem to have completed all buyer investigations, review of reports, other applicable information, disclosures pertaining to that contingency or cancellation right, and elected to proceed with the transaction. Assumed all liability and responsibility for the expense for repairs or correction pertaining to that contingency or cancellation right, or the inability to obtain financing. So technically, once the buyer signs the contingency removal, he's on the hook. Okay? That means he can lose his deposit. And I always tell my buyers, you know what? Once this happens and you find a house that you like better than this one and you remove that contingency, you cannot back out of this deal. I make the people feel like they have to be in it 100%, not 50%. And of course, the effective cancellation of deposits, if they give written notice of cancellation, of course, everybody has to mutually sign. Okay. Otherwise, the money is tied up in escrow. 15, final verification of condition. Buyer shall have the right to make a final verification 5 days prior to the close of escrow. Repairs shall be completed prior to the final verification of condition unless agreed in writing. Repairs to be performed at seller's expense may be performed by the seller or through others, provided the work complies with law, including permit, inspection, or approval requirements. Repairs shall be performed in good, skillful manner. of materials of quality and appearance comparable to existing materials, and it's understood that the exact restoration or appearance of cosmetic items following the repairs may not be possible. Seller shall obtain invoices and receipts for repairs performed by others and prepare a written statement indicating that repairs have been performed by the seller on the date of such repairs, such copies of invoices for final verification. Proration of property taxes and items. Everything is prorated to the close of escrow. Compensation, buyer and seller both agree to compensation to broker as specified in a separate written agreement. Scope and duty. Buyer and seller agree that broker does not decide what price the buyer should pay or seller should accept. They don't guarantee the condition of the property and don't guarantee the performance, adequacy, or completeness of inspections, services, products, or repairs made by the sellers or others, and we do not have an obligation to conduct an inspection of common areas or off-site on the property. We shall not be responsible for identifying defects in areas of the property. So please read this and understand it. Representative capacity. If one or more of the parties is signing this agreement and they are in a trust or they're an LLC, they need to sign a representative capacity form. Joint escrow instructions. We are going to use our contract as joint escrow instructions, and page 10 has that. Let's go to number 21, remedies for buyer's breach of contract. This is the liquidated damages clause. So you guys were complaining about $10,000 not being enough. Okay, so the law says I have $100,000 of that buyer's money in escrow. But if there was to be some sort of problem and they did back out, I could only retain 3% of the purchase price as liquidated damages. Does everybody understand that? So we don't, some brokers say, well, you should give at least a 3% deposit of the purchase price. But we think that's way too much. So we'd like to put less than 3%. That's why 10,000 on 5,000. Really, like 1% is what Rita normally thinks should be the amount of deposit. I think nowadays with the market, you need to put more because you don't look strong if you don't put more money down.
I'm sorry, you put of the purchase price, right? 1% of the purchase price.
Yeah.
Or would you
But
say 1.5?
10, we put 10. That was 1.7, but 10,000 on 500,000, I think is
It's a lot.
no.
a lot.
I think it's adequate.
Okay.
So this is the liquidated damage clause. So if your buyer has signed all their contingency removal and they're moving forward and they decide on a whim they don't want to buy that house, they could lose up to 3% of their deposit, okay, by law. The next section is dispute, mediation and arbitration of disputes. So in regular English, because I hate reading legalese, I'll let Mazen do that. Okay, so mediation. Basically, if there's any dispute that arises out of the transaction, the buyer and the seller are going to mediate. That means they're going to discuss and try and come to a mutual agreement on what they're going to do with whatever the problem is. If that doesn't work out, and they both initial this clause down here, that means they're going to give up their right to go to a court of law, that they're going to go to an arbitration committee made up of lawyers, attorneys, and ex-judges, I believe, and realtors, and they will pay the fee for an arbitration committee, and it will be a binding decision, and that will be the end of it. So let me just talk to you guys. If you're a listing agent, and the buyer initials the arbitration of disputes, and the seller goes, oh, I don't want to initial that. Okay, so you write a counter offer, but you don't address this. Do you realize you don't have a contract? So everything on the contract has to be agreed upon. So if your seller does not want to sign the arbitration of disputes, you have to counter it out in the counter. Are you following me, Mass? Right?
Yes.
Did I say it right?
You have to counter off. You have to counter the counter.
No, you have to counter the offer.
Yeah.
So if the buyer signs this and the seller does not want to, I mean, the buyer initials this clause and the seller doesn't want to, the only way to have a binding contract is if you wrote it in the counter. Right? So let's say you forgot and you didn't notice that the buyer signed it and your seller decided not to sign it. You really don't have a contract. That's all I'm trying to say. So you have to pay attention to your contract. Okay, so
Isn't
we
that
are.
optional?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that optional?
It is optional. But if you're a listing agent and the buyer writes that they want it, I mean,
Seller does.
you just have to have a meeting of the minds. If they both agree not to sign it, that's fine. If they both agree to sign it, that's fine. Okay, so the last page is a lot of definitions. Oh no, I think I missed that. I'm not going to read all this, but I expect all of you guys to do this because I'm going to give you a little homework assignment as well. I think there's two important things. Equal housing opportunity. The property is sold in compliance with federal, state, local anti-discrimination laws. Always point that out. You never want to be sued because of discrimination. And we've had people in our office that have been sued because of that. Okay, so you cannot discriminate no matter what.
No. When you're saying that, yeah, I'm going to. What if your seller decides not to sell it because they saw who put the offer in? Can you force them to take that offer? Because you technically can't force your seller to take any offer that they don't want to take.
Well, he better make a higher counter offer.
What do you mean?
For what reason is he not taking it? What if it's a full price offer and it's the terms that he's
Well,
requiring?
that's what I'm asking. How do you,
Then that buyer can sue him for specific performance.
is there any way to cover your own ass to say, well, I presented the offer?
Yeah, you have like presentation of offer, seller has rejected your offer.
Okay.
But I swear to God, that guy's going to take us to court,
No.
right?
'Cause I know that used to be a huge thing in Rolling Heights. That used to happen a lot. Rolling Heights was very...
Really? Did you understand what he was saying?
Well, you said that he's gonna take us to court. Who are you referring to?
So the
He
buyer-
said if the buyer came in the house and the seller saw who the buyer was and decided, I don't want to sell to that person.
Okay.
So he's discriminating.
Correct.
I don't know based on what, but he's discriminating. Raphael was saying,
Is there any way to cover my ass to me as a selling agent to cover my ass and say, well, I presented the offer, it was there, the seller doesn't want to sell because XYZ reason.
As long as you have not non-discriminatory reasons or non.
But that's his only reason.
Discriminatory reasons are his reason.
What are his reasons? Me as an agent, what's my obligation to present?
you present it and then you have the seller, I presented the offer, here's the seller's rejection of offer. It's going to go back to the buyer and the buyer's going to go, why didn't he sell me this house? I offered full price.
Do I have to disclose?
What, you're going to tell him that, oh, he didn't sell it to you because he doesn't like the way you look?
That's the only reason he gave me. I don't want to act as
I wouldn't say that.
well. So,
But you want to, you know what's going to, it happened in our office, well, in one of the offices
Yeah.
I was at. And what happened was they didn't want to rent to that person and they took them, I'm not kidding, they had to go to court. It was a full-blown mess
yeah, I understand.
because they figured it
They
out.
figured it out.
They're like, they discriminated against me because they didn't like
I'm
me.
not going to go lie to the buyer's agents because then that's going to put my ass in even more hot water because not only am I helping cover it up, I lied and
I don't think that you can actually say that reason, can you? Are you going to disclose the reason that your seller didn't take it?
I mean, you've got some sort of confidentiality.
I wouldn't say, oh,
so I had to just make something up then.
I wouldn't make something up. I would just say he rejected it. That's all I would say.
Okay.
Because if you say something,
Yeah, I wouldn't
it's
go.
not.
Yeah, no,
I
you
wouldn't
could
go
do
any
that.
further
Add
than
anything
that.
to it?
Yeah.
Nothing.
What, Felipe? Do you have
No,
something?
I would just
Said I don't know.
Yeah, you don't
You don't know.
incriminate yourself
Okay.
because if you
Yeah.
said that,
So you're not obligated to tell the reason even if you know why.
No.
you're never obligated to tell the reason for anything,
Okay.
right?
Just hope that they don't figure it out.
Well, I just
like in
figured
Ray's
just
case.
like if you saw.
Oh, the people that get discriminated against always figure it out. But just believe me,
Yeah,
they
they
figure
do.
it out.
Um,
It just becomes like,
but I figured it's under the same, same aspect as, well, I saw a leak under the
well, but think about this.
sink, but I
The
did the same
property
thing.
is sold in compliance with federal, state, and local anti-discrimination laws. And here your seller goes, oh, I don't want to sell to that guy because I don't like the way he looks. And they're signing a contract that says that they're in compliance. They're not in compliance. I had a seller, he was from Missouri, and he sold his father's house. So he flew out here from Missouri,